Welcome back, everybody. So last week, the government sought another postponement of our local government elections. Joining us now to discuss implications of this, General Secretary of the People's National Party, Dr. Dayton Campbell. Also got on Zoom, constitutional lawyer, Dr. Lloyd Barnett. We welcome you both to Smile Jamaica. Thank you for being here with us this morning.
Good morning, thanks
Okay.
for inviting me.
Let me start with you, Dr. Campbell. I think I know where you stand on this, but let us have your views, please.
Just to be sure.
Well, good morning and good morning to your viewers. I do believe that it was a practice in Jamaica for the party in power to essentially play with the date for the local government election to give themselves an advantage. And we thought that that had come to an end in 2015, 2016 when some changes were made. Two critical changes. Local Government Act 2015, 14, that amended Section 66 of the Constitution to enshrine local government in the Constitution. And then the three strategic laws in 2016, which then amended ROPA, the Representation of the People's Act, to set a fixed 4-year cycle for local government election. So the government cannot just come to say that historically this has been done before. It would be akin to saying that somebody who doesn't wear a seatbelt now could say, but in 1990 there was no law requiring you to wear a seatbelt. If the law has been changed, then the behavior should change. And it is unfortunate because we think it is anti-democratic, and the reasons that have been given, I don't think that they are substantial. The reason to suggest that you're waiting to make Portmore a parish, it doesn't hold true because you could make Portmore a parish, yes or no. That doesn't prevent you from calling the election. Additionally, the boundaries that they mentioned as a part of the reasons, those boundary changes are triggered at a general election and not at a local government election. And the boundaries are really the purview of the ECJ.
What about the matter of budget?
The budgetary, that is the most egregious of them all, because the government is in one breath praising themselves and seeking accolades by saying that they have collected over $80 billion above what they budgeted for. So you did a budget and you said, this is what we expect to collect. You've collected $80 billion above that. And last year, they collected $99 billion above what they budgeted for. If you combine that, that's $179 billion. To keep the local government election is $1.7 billion. 1% of the 179 billion additional taxes that they've collected. So to give that as a justification just doesn't make sense. And the third thing, which is about economic uncertainty internationally, also doesn't make sense because the government doesn't control that. And we have a democratic system which you have to plan for. If there's a crisis, that may be the reason the people want to change the government, because they want somebody else to manage the crisis. And so the government has to make preparation for an election, whether things are good or bad. They have that responsibility to make the budgetary allocation for it, for the democratic process to go on. And I'm appealing to the Prime Minister and the other members of the government to put the political considerations aside. Because the truth be told, based on our own internal polling and everything that we've been doing, the real reason they haven't called the election is because the PNP, which they tried to sell a message that we weren't viable, they've realized based on their latest polling that the party is very viable and competitive. And we've done our pollings, and you'll be seeing those later this week to confirm the argument that I'm putting, that it's strictly a political consideration for them not calling it.
Dr. Barnett, I want to bring you in here. Constitutionally, what are the things that we're encroaching on, if at all?
Well, local government is where public administration comes into closest touch with the ordinary person in their everyday life. And therefore, the treatment of local government is essential to the experience of the democratic process. And one should be careful not to frustrate that relationship because you might put the whole democratic system in danger. So that when you postpone the elections over long periods, they are in fact denying people participation in the business of their local government administration. And that has very sad implications for democracy.
Yes.
Last held in November 2016, constitutionally due every 4 years. Next polls were postponed in November 2020 because of COVID. In February 21, Parliament extended the delay by a further 12 months, making them due by February 27, 2022. We're now at February 28, 2023. That's a long time. Dr.
Yes.
Barnett, should we be looking at
The COVID excuse is hardly a good one because you remember the general elections were held.
Right.
Despite COVID, so that we demonstrated that it was possible to hold national elections in the COVID situation, and that has improved greatly now. So that is no longer even a possible argument.
So should we be looking at fixing, I mean, we're talking about it for years, but really, are we to be putting it front and center again? Fixing dates?
But didn't we? Because the act determines that it
True.
is.
That's what the three strategic laws.
You see, I think the franchise is so essential to the democratic process that politicians should not be able to deprive people of their right to exercise the franchise. Yes. And the election dates should therefore not be subject to manipulation in the way in which it has been. Neither the general parliamentary elections nor the local government elections should be so subject to political decision making. And I think fixed election dates should therefore be the next and important step in our constitutional progress.
But what do we do, Dayton? Because Parliament met, the vote was done. What's the recourse? Do the people take the government to court to say we demand our democratic right?
Well, we have contemplated that. The time period that the matter will take to go through the court is something that is a rate limiting step that we don't have control over as to whether or not it's even a viable option. But every government will respond to public pressure, and I think what will have to happen is that public pressure will have to come to bear on the government because the reasons just don't make sense. For example, the financial reason given, I already spoke to that it just takes 1% of the surplus, and you should have budgeted for it anyway. The economic uncertainty internationally. There are other countries that have gone through general election, local elections that are growing at a faster pace than Jamaica. St. Kitts, Barbados, Guyana, obviously Guyana found oil, so that would help them greatly. But there is a consideration here. We have 14 parish council divisions currently that are unrepresented, that the mayor has to be representing. And that has come about because of the councillor becoming member of parliament, because of resignation and because of death. So we've had 3 JLP councillors who became members of parliament. Crystal Lee from Retreat, who unfortunately won North with St. Anne. We have Homer Davis from the Cambridge division in South St. James, and you have George Wright from the Petersfield division in Central Westmoreland. And then for the PNP, you have Hugh Graham, who was the council for the Lloydersville division in Northwest St. Catherine. And then you've had several deaths in Trinityville. That's why the mayor was changed in St. Thomas. And you've had 2 deaths in Eastern Portland, Fellowship and Fairhill. You've had death of a councillor in Nat Patrick in Central Manchester. You have death in Mineral Heights, in Greater Portmore East, in Point Hill, and then you've had the resignation of the councillor for Spanish Town. So that's 14 of the divisions currently have been without a representative for a prolonged period of time. Now, they're not able to call a by-election in those divisions because the law states that if the general local government election is due within a year, you can't call a by-election. Now, you keep postponing for 1 year, so it prohibits you from calling a by-election in those divisions. So a mayor who may not have campaigned, may not know anything at all about that division,
may not
doesn't
have
any relationship with the people in that division, is the one who is currently servicing the division. It doesn't make sense. And we're talking about the local issues, the parochial roads, the minor water supply, the garbage collection, all of these things that need a local representative on the ground is the first point of contact with the people. And so I think the government ought to just do the right thing and call the elections.
Yeah. Gentlemen, we have to go. I got to say, I'm surprised that we're even having to have this discussion, because having agreed by law that this would never happen again, I'm surprised that it's happening again, but let's see.
As the Prime Minister said, we'd have fixed election date within the first 100 days. We've gone 2,500 days since. Still waiting on your Prime Minister, Holiness.
What we need is that the leading political parties should commit themselves to fixed election dates
Yeah.
so as to avoid in the future this undemocratic and undeserved situation.
Excellent.
Thanks, Dr. Barnett. Thank you very much, Dr. Campbell. General Secretary of the People's National Party, Dr. Dayton Campbell, and constitutional lawyer, Dr. Lloyd Barnett. We're back after this short break with farmer and storyteller Gary Stevenson. Soon come.